What if the most powerful being in the Dragon Ball multiverse raised Goku from birth? We all know the story. A Saiyan baby is sent to Earth, crashes near Mount Paozu, and a kind old martial artist named Grandpa Gohan takes him in. The baby is wild, violent, utterly uncontrollable, until a fall down a ravine cracks his head open and erases every trace of Saiyan aggression. That gentle old man picks up the crying child, looks into his eyes, and says something that changes the course of the entire universe. I think I'll call you Goku. Goku's entire identity, his kindness, his love of fighting, his mercy toward enemies, all traces back to those quiet years on the mountain with his grandfather. But what if that pod never reached Grandpa Gohan? What if, instead, the Grand Priest, the Daishinkan himself, father of all angels, personal attendant to the Omni King Zeno, and the strongest warrior in the entire multiverse, detected that tiny Saiyan capsule hurtling through Universe 7 and decided, with that calm, enigmatic smile of his, to intervene? What if baby Kakarot opened his eyes not to the forests of Mount Paozu, but to the gleaming, infinite halls of Zeno's palace? This is not just a power-scaling scenario. This is a complete rewrite of who Goku becomes as a person. Let's break it down. The year is age 737. On planet Vegeta, a low-class Saiyan warrior named Bardock clutches his infant son to his chest one final time. His wife Gin stands beside him, tears streaming down her face. They have seen the signs. Frieza's fleet has gathered. The end is coming. Kakarot, Bardock whispers, loading the baby into the pod. Survive. Gin presses her hand against the glass of the capsule. Please, she says softly, be safe. The pod launches. 1 month later, Frieza raises a single finger above planet Vegeta and erases the Saiyan race from existence. In the canon timeline, that pod drifts through space and lands near Mount Paozu on Earth. An old man hears the crash, investigates, and finds a screaming alien baby with a monkey tail. The rest is history. But in this timeline, something different happens. Deep within Zeno's palace, a realm beyond space and time, the Grand Priest glances at his crystal ball. He sees everything through that sphere: the birth and death of stars, the rise and fall of civilizations, the quiet machinations of gods who think they are unseen. And tonight, he notices something small. Negligible, really. A tiny space pod carrying an infant with a power level so low it would not even register on most scouters. But the Grand Priest does not measure potential the way mortals do. He tilts his head, that serene smile never wavering, and murmurs to himself, "How curious. A Saiyan child drifting alone through the cosmos. And yet, there is something about this one's spirit." He glances over his shoulder at the throne room, where Zeno sits alone, listlessly stacking blocks and knocking them over, stacking and knocking, stacking and knocking. The Omni King's attendants stand rigid as statues on either side. No one plays with him. No one can. Everyone is too terrified. The Grand Priest looks back at the crystal ball, at the baby, at that tiny, screaming, monkey-tailed infant who, in another life, would befriend Zeno anyway, decades from now. Perhaps, the Grand Priest says quietly, this child might serve a purpose after all. He extends his hand. A portal shimmers open in the void of space, swallowing the pod whole before it ever reaches Earth. And just like that, the Dragon Ball timeline as we know it ceases to exist. The consequences of this single act split across two fronts: what unfolds at Zeno's palace and what collapses on Earth. Let's start with Earth, because it is a catastrophe. Without Goku, the Dragon Ball story simply does not happen. Grandpa Gohan lives a quiet, uneventful life on Mount Paozu. He never finds the alien baby. He never passes on his fighting spirit. He never gets crushed by a rampaging great ape on a full moon night. The old man probably dies peacefully of old age, his power pole collecting dust in the corner of his hut, the 4-star Dragon Ball sitting untouched on a shelf. When a teenage Bulma drives into the mountains years later on her Dragon Ball hunt, she finds the 4-star ball. But there's no wild-haired boy guarding it. no companion for the journey. No one defeats Emperor Pilaf. No one trains under Master Roshi alongside Krillin. The chain of friendships that creates the Z-Fighters never forms. Yamcha stays a desert bandit. Tien remains an assassin under the Crane School. Krillin is still a bullied monk nobody remembers. And when Raditz arrives on Earth in age 761 looking for his baby brother, he finds nothing. Imagine the scene. Raditz lands his pod in a field, checks his scouter, and scans the planet. No high power levels, no Kakarot. Just a world full of weaklings with an average power level of 5. Raditz mutters, flicking his scouter off. Useless rock. The brat probably died years ago. He reports back to Vegeta and Nappa. Kakarot's gone. The planet's worthless. Vegeta, arms crossed, barely looks up. I couldn't care less about your low-class brother, but you mentioned something interesting before we came here. Magical orbs that grant wishes? Dragon Balls, Raditz says. That's what the Namekian on Earth called them. But here's the thing. Without Goku's adventures, nobody on Earth is actively gathering Dragon Balls. Bulma's quest fizzled without a companion. Raditz's scouter picks up Piccolo's energy, the strongest being on the planet at roughly 400, but that's laughable by Saiyan standards. Vegeta hears no chatter about wishes being granted, no scouter transmissions worth intercepting. Forget it, Vegeta says flatly. There's nothing there worth my time. No Saiyan saga, no Namek saga, no training with King Kai. Earth exists in quiet irrelevance, a backwater planet no one ever thinks about again. Now let's turn to where the real story unfolds. Zeno's palace. Baby Kakarot arrives in a realm no mortal has ever inhabited. The architecture is pristine, infinite, sterile. Marble corridors that stretch into eternity, designed for divine beings who need neither food nor sleep. But a Saiyan infant needs both, constantly, and in enormous quantities. The Grand Priest materializes a cradle with a wave of his hand. He places the screaming baby inside it. The child flails, tail thrashing, fists swinging wildly at the air. Pure Saiyan aggression. My, the Grand Priest says, not a trace of concern on his face. You certainly have spirit. Then, tiny footsteps. Rapid, excited, pattering across the marble floor. Zeno rushes into the room, his enormous eyes wider than usual. What's that? Zeno squeals, pointing at the cradle. What's that little thing? It's moving! It's so loud! This, the Grand Priest says, gently lifting the baby so Zeno can see, is a Saiyan child. His name is Kakarot. Kakarot! Zeno repeats, delighted by the sound of the word. Kakarot! Kakarot! Can I hold him? Can I? Can I? Carefully, Lord Zeno. The Omni King, the being who erased 6 universes on a whim, cradles the infant Saiyan in his small arms. And for the first time in millennia, the Grand Priest sees something in Zeno's eyes he has not seen before. Joy. Real, unguarded, childlike joy. He grabbed my finger, Zeno gasps. Grand Priest, he grabbed my finger. I like him. He's my friend now. And in that moment, baby Kakarot becomes the most protected being in all of existence. As Kakarot grows from infancy into childhood, the Grand Priest begins his training. And this is where the scenario becomes truly mind-bending, because training under the Grand Priest is nothing like training under Grandpa Gohan or Master Roshi. There is no Kamehameha here, no running laps with turtle shells strapped to your back, no milk delivery routes at dawn. Instead, the Grand Priest starts with the fundamentals of divine energy. Ki control at a level that even the gods of destruction struggle with. From an early age, Kakarot is exposed to God Ki. He breathes it. He exists in an environment saturated with it. Where canon Goku doesn't encounter God Ki until the Battle of Gods saga in age 778, over 40 years into his life, this Kakarot is swimming in it before he can form a sentence. At age 4, during a training session in the Null realm, the Grand Priest demonstrates a basic movement exercise. He throws 10,000 ki projectiles at the child simultaneously. "Do not think," the Grand Priest instructs, hands clasped behind his back, watching with that eternal calm smile. "Your body already knows what to do. The mind is the obstacle. Let it go." Young Kakarot stands in the center of the barrage, eyes wide, fists clenched, and his body moves. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but it moves before his brain tells it to. 3 projectiles graze him. The other 9,997 miss entirely. The Grand Priest's smile widens, just slightly. "Remarkable," he says softly. "Saiyan biology truly is fascinating. You adapt to the principles of Ultra Instinct faster than any of my children did in their first century of existence." This is the cornerstone of the Grand Priest's training philosophy. Angels exist in a permanent state of perfected Ultra Instinct. It is not a technique they activate, it is their natural way of being. The Grand Priest's Ultra Instinct is confirmed to be far more accurate than even Whis'. For him, cultivating this art in a student from childhood, before ego and conscious thought create barriers, is the ideal scenario. And Saiyan biology makes it exponential. Saiyans adapt. They evolve. They push past limits that would shatter other species. Imagine that genetic potential, nurtured from birth toward the singular goal of instinctive movement. But the Grand Priest is wise enough to recognize that raw power without character produces monsters. He has watched through his crystal ball as the Zamasus fell to hubris. He has observed how unchecked power corrupts even the divine. So alongside combat training, he teaches the boy perspective. "Come here, Kakarot," the Grand Priest says one afternoon, summoning his crystal ball. "I want to show you something." The sphere displays a small blue planet, Earth, a village, farmers tilling soil, children playing by a river. "What is this?" young Kakarot asks, squinting at the tiny figures. "This is the planet your parents sent you toward. These are mortals. They live for perhaps 80 or 90 years, and then they are gone." "That's not very long." "No, it isn't." The Grand Priest adjusts the image. The seasons change in seconds. The children grow old. New children replace them. The village expands. A generation passes in a breath. And yet, look at what they build in that brief time. Families, homes, love. They know their lives are fragile, and yet they choose to create anyway. Do you understand why I show you this? Kakarot shakes his head. Because power without reverence for life is simply destruction. And there are enough destroyers in the multiverse already. Meanwhile, across the palace, Zeno's world has transformed. The Omni King has a playmate for the first time in his ancient, eternal existence. They play games, though games with Zeno is a relative term. Zeno once erased a solar system because he lost at hide-and-seek. Now, with Kakarot, the games are different. Tag through the corridors. Sparring matches where Kakarot throws everything he has, and Zeno giggles because the punches tickle. Building contests where Zeno materializes entire miniature galaxies, and Kakarot tries to mimic him using ki. "I made a planet!" Zeno shouts, holding up a glowing, marble-sized world. "I made a rock," Kakarot says, staring at a lopsided ki construct. "I love it!" Zeno exclaims. "It's the best rock in the whole multiverse. I'm keeping it forever." And he does. Zeno keeps a crudely shaped ki rock on his throne for eternity. This bond reshapes both of them. Zeno, who, in canon, erases universes without a second thought, develops something almost resembling empathy, not for the abstract concept of life, but for this one specific person. And Kakarot, who in canon develops warmth through human friendships earned in shared struggle, develops it here through one singular, extraordinary friendship with a being of absolute power. But, and this is critical, something is also lost. Canon Goku's greatest strength has never been his power. It's his connections. Krillin, Bulma, Yamcha, Piccolo, Vegeta, Chi-Chi, Gohan. These relationships are forged through shared struggle, through fighting side by side against impossible odds. His ability to turn enemies into allies comes from having lived among people as an equal. This Kakarot doesn't have that. He's raised among immortal, all-powerful, emotionally detached beings. The angels are, by nature and law, neutral. Even Whis, when he visits his father and meets the young Saiyan, maintains a polite distance. "Father," Whis says during one visit, tilting his head curiously at the teenager sparring in the Null realm. "Isn't this rather unusual, raising a mortal child here?" "Is it?" the Grand Priest replies pleasantly. "I sent Merus to live among mortals to broaden his perspective. Is the reverse not equally valuable?" Whis muses, tapping his staff. "I suppose. Though I must say, Lord Beerus would be rather alarmed to learn there's a Saiyan in Zeno's palace who can already move faster than most gods of destruction." "Then perhaps," the Grand Priest says, his smile never changing, "it would be wise not to tell Lord Beerus just yet." Whis chuckles. "My lips are sealed, father." By age 762, Kakarot is 25 years old. He has spent his entire life in the divine realm. His power is beyond anything the mortal universe has ever produced. He can access Ultra Instinct at will. He wields God Ki as naturally as breathing. He has observed through the Grand Priest's crystal ball the rise and fall of empires, the birth of stars, the death of planets. And he has watched Frieza. The Grand Priest showed him everything, not out of cruelty, but out of honesty. Kakarot has seen the recording of Planet Vegeta's final moments. He watched Bardock, his father, fly alone into Frieza's army, screaming defiance as a supernova erased everything he ever loved. He watched Guinea, his mother, pressing her hand against the glass of his pod with tears in her eyes. "They loved you," the Grand Priest told him, standing beside the young man as the crystal ball replayed the destruction. "Your father fought because he could not accept injustice. Your mother sent you away because her love was stronger than her fear. They were imperfect, mortal, and extraordinary." Kakarot said nothing for a long time. Then, quietly, "I want to go down there." The Grand Priest raised an eyebrow. "To the mortal realm?" "I've watched long enough. I want to feel it. What it's like to walk among them, to fight someone who actually bleeds." The Grand Priest studied his student's face carefully. 25 years of training, 25 years of discipline, perspective, and cosmic awareness. And yet, behind those calm, silver-tinged eyes, the Grand Priest could see it, that Saiyan fire, that irrepressible genetic hunger for challenge that no amount of divine conditioning could fully extinguish. "Very well," the Grand Priest said, "but remember what I taught you. Power without reverence is simply destruction," Kakarot finished. "I know." The Grand Priest opened a portal, and for the first time in his life, Kakarot stepped into the mortal universe. He arrived on Namek. The timing was not coincidental. Through his crystal ball, the Grand Priest had observed Frieza's campaign there, the slaughter of Namekian villages, the hunt for Dragon Balls, the casual genocide of an innocent race. He allowed Kakarot to choose this as his first destination, a test of character as much as a homecoming. Picture this from Frieza's perspective. The Emperor sits in his hover chair, sipping wine, watching his soldiers terrorize a Namekian elder. Everything is proceeding according to plan. Immortality is within his grasp. Then, a shimmer in the air, a portal, and a young man steps through it. Tall, muscular, wild black hair, and a tail wrapped casually around his waist. Frieza's wineglass freezes halfway to his lips. "A Saiyan?" he hisses, eyes narrowing. "Impossible. I destroyed them all." He checks his scouter. It reads nothing. Absolute zero. "No power level? What is this trickery?" Kakarot looks at Frieza, really looks at him. and sees the tyrant who murdered his parents, his race, his entire world. And yet, his expression remains calm, measured, almost serene. "So," Kakarot says quietly, "you're Frieza." "Lord Frieza," the Emperor corrects sharply, rising from his chair, "and you will address me with the respect I deserve, you filthy monkey, or I will—" Frieza fires a death beam, point blank, faster than any mortal eye can track. Kakarot's body moves on its own. His head tilts 2 inches to the left. The beam passes through the space where his skull was a microsecond ago and vaporizes a mountain behind him. Frieza's eyes go wide. "What?" Kakarot doesn't attack. He just walks forward. Every blast Frieza hurls, every death beam, every ki wave, every desperate explosion slides past him like water around a stone. Ultra instinct in its perfected form. The body moves without thought, without effort. "What are you?" Frieza screams, powering up to his final form, 100% of his full power. The planet cracks beneath him. The sky burns. Kakarot stops walking. He stands directly in front of Frieza, close enough to touch. "I'm a Saiyan," he says simply. "The son of Bardock and Gain. My name is Kakarot, and I'm here to end your empire." Frieza throws a punch with everything he has. Kakarot catches it with one hand. The shockwave from the blocked punch splits the ocean behind them clean in half. And for the first time in his life, Frieza, the self-proclaimed Emperor of the universe, the destroyer of worlds, the being who believed himself to be the strongest creature alive, feels something he has never felt before. Fear. Not the calculated concern he felt about the Super Saiyan legend, not the irritation of a plan going wrong. True, primal, existential terror. He is looking into the eyes of a being who exists on a plane of power where he is less than nothing. But Kakarot does not kill him. He releases Frieza's fist, steps back, and says, "Leave. Disband your army. Never touch another innocent world again. This is the only warning you will receive." Frieza, trembling, whispers, "Why? Why not destroy me?" "Because I was taught that power without reverence for life is simply destruction," Kakarot replies, "and I am not a destroyer." He turns and walks away. Behind him, Frieza collapses to his knees, staring at his own shaking hands, trying to comprehend what just happened to his universe. And that scene, that single, quiet confrontation, reveals the fundamental truth at the heart of this what if. The Grand Priest created a more powerful warrior than Grandpa Gohan ever could. That's not in question. The gap between their training capabilities is literally infinite. An angel in permanent perfected ultra instinct versus a retired martial artist who once delivered milk for Master Roshi. There is no comparison. But think about what's missing. There's no spirit bomb on Namek, no energy gathered from the hopes of an entire planet, no friends screaming Goku's name from the sidelines, no Krillin dying in his arms to trigger a transformation born from grief and rage and love. There's no Super Saiyan. That golden transformation, the most iconic moment in anime history, is born from loss. From Goku watching his best friend die and screaming into the void. This Kakarot never experienced that loss. He never had a best friend to lose. There's no, "You fool! I'm going to make you suffer for what you've done to my friends." There's no fury. There's no tears. There's just efficiency. Cold, perfect, divine efficiency. Canon Goku turns enemies into friends because he fights beside them, bleeds with them, laughs with them. He inspires Piccolo to sacrifice himself for Gohan. He makes Vegeta admit in his final moments against Buu, "You're better than me, Kakarot. You are the best." He earns that. Through decades of rivalry, struggle, and shared experience. This Kakarot would be admired, feared, respected, but never loved, not the way Goku is loved. He would be an angel in all but name, detached, powerful, and ultimately alone in a way that no amount of cosmic awareness can remedy. His only true friend is Zeno, an omnipotent child god who can erase reality on a whim. That's not a support system, that's a tightrope. Grandpa Gohan, that gentle, stubby old man with his fox mask and his silly rock, scissors, paper technique, gave Goku something the Grand Priest, for all his infinite power, never could. A human life, small joys, chasing dragonflies on Mount Paozu, sleeping under the stars with a glowing orange ball he thought held his grandfather's spirit, a wife who yells at him to get a job, sons who look up to him not because he's the strongest, but because he's their dad, a rival who despises and respects him in equal measure. The Grand Priest would forge the perfect weapon. Grandpa Gohan created Goku. And in the end, Dragon Ball has always argued, through every saga, every transformation, every impossible comeback, that the imperfect path is the one worth walking. That's why, in every timeline that matters, the pod has to land on Mount Paozu. The baby has to hit his head, and a kind old man has to look down and say, "I think I'll call you Goku." And that wraps up today's What If. Do you think Kakarot raised by the Grand Priest would truly surpass the Goku we know and love? Or does Goku's real strength come from something no amount of divine training can replicate? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and the debates on these videos are always incredible. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button. It genuinely helps more than you know. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a What If breakdown. We've got some absolutely insane scenarios coming up next that are going to blow your mind. Until then, keep your power level high and your spirit higher. I'll see you in the next one.